Good morning and welcome back to 501c TV. I'm your host, Janelle Harris, and this is the podcast that talks to nonprofits, nonprofit partners, thought leaders, system change leaders to find out what's going on in the industry, what important events are happening. And we're happy to have with us here this morning Randal Baker, who's the president of the Board of Trustees with the Morikami Museum and Japanese Gardens. Welcome, Randal.
Thank you. Good morning, Michelle.
I'm so happy to have you here. I really want to dive in a lot about what you are doing for Morikami, what your background is, how we got here, and all that fun stuff. And I think it's really important too to talk about all the great things that you guys are doing at the museum and gardens. Let's talk a little bit. So if no one here watching has been to the Morikami Gardens, it is stunning, and I think it's a really kind of unique property situated right here in our backyard.
It is.
And we're going to talk a little bit about why it's unique and why you should visit it, because it's a pretty amazing place, and it's got a really cool history, which I always love the history of stuff. So, but without further ado, let's talk a little bit about what your role is. I know we talked off camera. You've been there for a really long time. And how did we end up here?
I have been there a really long time. I joined the Board of Trustees in 1995.
Okay.
I was at the time working for IBM as a reseller of IBM equipment to governmental agencies in South Florida.
Gotcha.
So I had Palm Beach County Office of Information Technology, or the governmental complex. Mm-hmm. I had the city of Delray Beach, city of Boca Raton that I was marketing to IBM services and products. And because I was in the public sector, I was really interested in giving back.
Okay.
So I went, at that time, IBM had a big plant in Boca Raton on Yamato Road.
Okay.
And we had a corporate liaison to the state of Florida. His name was Norm Ostrowski. And I went to Norm and I asked if there was any opportunity to give back. And he said, Randal, let me check things out and to get back to you. A couple weeks passed, and he called up and he said, listen, currently we have a trustee on the board at the Morikami Museum, an IBM employee that is actually being transferred to Austin.
Interesting.
So we've had a presence on the board ever since its inception. We'd like for you to interview if you would like. So at that time, I was interviewing with the director of the museum, Larry Rosenzweig, and the Board of Trustees president, Nancy Stroud, at the time. And they interviewed me, and they offered me a position. And in 1995, June, I joined the board.
Oh my gosh, that's so crazy. And had you had a lot of exposure to Morikami at that point? Like, had you been there before and spent time there? And
funny you should ask, because I had never been there.
Okay, you know what? That's probably actually pretty cool, though. Like, you probably just dove right in and you were like, all right, I need to know everything I need to know about this place.
I had never been to Japan, didn't know anything about the museum except for the signs that I had driven past.
Right.
And was enlightened.
I'm sure. It's a really enchanting place if you've actually never been there, and we'll talk a little bit about that as well. So you joined in 1995, and at that point, what were your thoughts? Were you like, this is really cool? Tell me about Morikami back in 1995. Versus where we are today. I'm sure it's drastically different.
Yeah. So in 1995, we had the new building. It was opened in 1993. Before that, we had the Yamato-kan, which is the small museum, the original museum that was built in 1977. So in 1993, they opened up this facility that opened up the opportunity for much better exhibits. In the old building, there was no air conditioning. There was a wall unit in the office for the administrator, but nothing else. So nobody was willing to give us or allow us to exhibit their artwork because it wasn't in a climate-controlled environment.
Right.
We didn't have any way to store it in a climate-controlled environment except for at a warehouse. So with the opening of the new museum in 1993, we upped that level.
Yeah,
so that
all the artifacts and things. So, tell me a little bit about that. The artifacts and exhibits that are there permanent ones there, or are they kind of like a constantly rotating thing?
So right now we've got just one small exhibit that's permanent. That's the Kokeshi doll collection, and that's in the small gallery.
Okay.
Then the rest of it is rotating. And currently, right now, we have the jewelry exhibit. I don't know if you've seen that or not.
No, I have not, but that is right up my alley.
there's an artist that generates very, very miniature replicas of events, and she puts them into jewelry.
That's
and it's
pretty
just
cool.
beautiful.
I'm sure. So let's talk about the word Yamato too, which I just found out. Tell me about that, because everywhere you drive down here, and especially in Boca, there's Yamato Road.
Yes.
So I doubt that a lot of people know what that means.
So Yamato is actually an ancient name for Japan.
Correct.
So
cool.
When the settlers came here, Joe Sakai came here in 1903 with Henry Flagler, and Flagler with the railway trying to get people to develop the property.
Right.
He settled in South Florida and actually developed the Yamato colony. In that, what his intent was to bring Japanese farmers from Japan to South Florida to teach the locals how the Japanese farm.
Correct.
And primarily, we were focused on pineapple farming.
I read that. They have an awesome website, by the way. You guys check it out. It's really set up beautifully online.
Thank goodness I got this correct.
Yay! But yes, I did read that, and actually, they did a really good job of the pineapple crop for a while, until then they were kind of like dethroned by Cuba, who kind of took that piece of it away.
You have read.
Yeah, I love the history of this. I love everything about it, because I think it's so unique to our area that you would think that, there's all this Japanese culture and history like right in that small spot, which is really cool and unique.
Well, and people don't understand that, right?
Yeah.
They don't understand that there was a Japanese colony here in the early 1900s, and what happened to that colony. And as the farming progressed and then rescinded because of the influence of the Cuban farmers and them bringing pineapples or sending pineapples from Cuba over to the United States and then using the Flagler Railway to get them to other parts, they decided they needed to shift. So they went to winter vegetables. They started to grow strawberries on the property, that sort of thing. Then the farmers kind of just, it wasn't the whirlwind opportunity that they thought it was going to be. So they kind of dispersed. And in the mid to late 40s, there were like only 3 families left on the property.
Wow. And how big was that property at the time?
Thousands of acres.
Okay. It was large.
You got to remember, in 1942 with the war, what happened was a judge went and took 6,000 acres of South Florida, of the Yamato colony, and actually made the Army Air Corps base.
That's right.
The training base, which is now the Boca Raton Regional Airport. Right?
Oh, I did not know that.
Yeah.
Oh, that's very interesting.
All of FAU and the airport was all that property that they seized back then.
Interesting. That puts it all in a perspective now. When I'm thinking about it like in an aerial view. I'm like, I got it now. Okay, that makes complete sense.
Army Air Corps planes.
Yes. Okay. Let's draw a map. Yeah, I got it. Interesting. Okay, and so then
there were like 3 families left, and they kind of dispersed. George Morikami was the last surviving member of that group. And he continued to amass the land as the other landowners left. And before he passed away in the mid-1960s, he wanted to give to his adopted homeland, right?
Right.
So he grew up in Japan, very young, 19 when he came over here, and amassed this property, and he wanted to give back to his adopted homeland. And so he tried to give the property to the county. They didn't want it. What are you going to do? And you got to remember, back in this time, 1965, jog road didn't exist. And so it was just all farmland in the middle of nowhere.
Right.
And they didn't want it off their tax rolls. So he tried to give it to the city for a park.
Yeah.
City didn't want it.
Oh, my goodness.
It took him 10 years to convince the county government to actually accept the land. Now think about that, right? Somebody trying to give you 200 acres of land at this time.
Oh, my goodness. Yeah.
Ching, ching.
Exactly. Wow.
So we have 200 acres of land that he gave to us in 1973. In 1975, he passed away. In 1977, the Yamato-kan was opened.
Got it.
And at that time, it was to the dedication of art and artifacts of Japan.
Got it.
And the cultural aspects. In 1993, like I said, Palm Beach County government invested in the property and built the new museum in order for us to be able to advance the mission. In that building, I'm sure you're aware, there's a 225-seat auditorium, there's 4,000 square feet of exhibit space, there's a store, there's a cafe, there's education facilities, there's the administrative offices. Downstairs, there's the area for the collection, which we preserve and collect the artifacts. We've got a little over 7,000 now, I guess.
Yeah, that's pretty,
and we
pretty
continue
impressive.
to ebb and flow with that number, but a decent collection of Japanese art.
Which is really cool. And so the gardens, too, are, I mean, we can't not talk about the gardens because they're beautiful. When did those come into play time-wise in that time frame?
So shortly after I started on the board in 1995, we were talking about the gardens, and they were under development. Palm Beach County had an impact tax at that time, and they were using some of that money to fund the development of the gardens.
Gotcha.
We contracted with a company, Karisu International. Hoichi Karisu is the president and owner of that company, and his family still works in that, and he still is actively involved.
Oh, cool.
In 2001 is when the gardens actually formally opened.
Interesting. Okay, so they've been around, but not. I thought they were around like much longer than that. So that's interesting.
They're very mature.
Yeah, I mean, it's beautiful. How many weddings do you guys do there a year?
A lot.
A lot, yeah, a ton. So, and tell me a little bit too, because I find this interesting because it's it's a unique kind of setup when we talk about like nonprofits. But walk me through a little bit of the public-private partnership and how that works and how it's a little bit different than maybe your traditional nonprofit that's out there.
Yeah. So Palm Beach County is the owner of the land.
Okay.
And the owner of the buildings.
Gotcha.
So that's their responsibility, right? Currently, they maintain the building, they maintain the grounds. The Friends of the Museum started, and then it became a board of trustees. And the mission of the board of trustees is to raise funds for the support of the authenticity of the museum.
Gotcha.
So some of the things that you see, the gardens specifically, Palm Beach County Parks and Rec can maintain those gardens, but they wouldn't keep them in a Japanese format.
Correct.
They wouldn't make sure that they are authentic as far as the 6 period gardens that we have dating from the early 800s to the 20th century, if you will. So what our mission is, our responsibility is to make sure that they're maintained to the level of the Japanese.
Absolutely. I'm thinking specifically the bonsai garden. How many bonsai gardens are in South Florida?
Not too many, but there's a lot of collectors.
Yes. So, keeping the integrity of that and making sure that is, to its authentic self. I get that. So that makes total sense.
The bonsai exhibit. We have the 6 period gardens. We've got another garden that's on our roadmap as far as to add the Hamana Hashitate, which is the Bridge to Heaven garden.
Okay.
You can find a sister of that in Miyazu, Japan. We've also got the collection and the exhibits. We want to make sure that they are in top order as far as viewing experience. So the museum board works to raise funds to do that.
Awesome.
We've also got a master plan with additional facilities to be added to the property. And that's what we also raise funds for.
Okay, awesome. So what is it about Morikami that you think is so, which grabs people in? I mean, you've been on the board a long time, and, in your opinion, what is it about the gardens that keeps people wanting to come there and come back? And
so if we're talking specifically about the gardens and not the museum and the collection,
yes,
the gardens is a serene place to go.
Yeah.
If you've ever walked the gardens, you understand. There are places to sit, to contemplate, to reflect, just to decompress. We've got a couple of programs. We've got the Stroll for Wellbeing. I don't know if you're familiar with that.
No, but let's talk about it.
The Stroll for Wellbeing was developed with the School of Nursing from FAU and the Morikami together.
Cool.
And what the intent was to show the effects of nature and the gardens on the human psyche as well as the human physical aspects. We've had people that are experiencing chemo for cancer treatments. We've had people come through that have PTSD from the Iraq War or even as far back as the Vietnam War. We've had people come that just need respite care. They've been inundated with trying to take care of a loved one, and they need some way to get back to themselves.
Sure.
And so we have this whole program. There's 12 different areas in the book. It's a 8-week, I think, program, 8 or 12-week program.
Cool.
Where you come and you go with a moderator to specific sites, and they guide you to what to believe and feel and think.
That's really cool.
So that you can help train your mind to relax and de-stress and decouple from the...
And eventually be able to just walk yourself through and do it on your own, which...
Absolutely.
Oh my gosh, that's amazing. I really love that.
And we've got a little video that shows that Stroll for Wellbeing program.
Okay.
But just as an example, a sheriff's office deputy, he had such anger issues, and they couldn't figure it out. And he had PTSD also.
Sure.
He came through, and in the gardens, we have the bamboo grove. And I don't know if you've ever been in a bamboo grove, but if it's quiet and you sit, you can hear the bamboo talking to you.
Yes.
It
It's like
squeaks
it moves
and
and it sways. And,
Exactly.
Yeah.
He actually had a meltdown at that point in the garden. And the reason was it took him back to Vietnam.
I'm sure, yeah.
And him hearing those same sounds when he was actually fighting the Viet Cong. And so that program helped him to understand that there's more than just what he experienced to those sounds. And it actually is calming now. And he actually changed his life dramatically and has been one of the most productive sheriff's office deputies doing community outreach and community service for the sheriff's office since then.
That's amazing. I'm sure that story alone, I'm sure you have hundreds more just like it, are probably one of the reasons that you've stayed on so long. I mean, that would keep me there just wanting to continue on.
Well, again, if you've visited the gardens, you understand what it can do for you, right? So not only are we raising funds and helping the community, but we're also helping ourselves through that.
Absolutely. And if you need a quiet spot, there's not a lot to find. There are some in South Florida, but it is. There's a lot of hustle and bustle, and it's a lot of activity around here. So to have a place like that to go to is
absolutely
cool.
And people drive down Jog Road and they're going 40, 45 miles an hour and they pass by it and they haven't ever been. And once you turn onto the property road and you go through that winding path and you see nothing but the trees, and then you get the beautiful Japanese architecture designed museum building, and you walk up into it, and then you look through the glass, through the windows, and you see this beautiful lake and garden surrounding it. You go out and you experience nature like you've never experienced before.
And it really does transport you. I mean, it really, I think, has that effect on people to take you to a different place, which is probably why people find so much, solace in going there, and they have a really great experience, which is so cool.
Yes.
And so tell me about the museum itself, because you guys do so much programming there, and I want people to understand we could probably do like 3 hours just on all your classes. I was telling Randall this morning, I was going through, I have a few smaller children, and the things that you have just for like families and kids to be able to come there and do, so cool.
So, we have our festivals, so we have events that people can go to. We have classes, education. One of the mission of the museum is to educate, inspire, and entertain. And so that's what we strive to do. From the Sume ink art painting classes to Ikebana flower arranging to Japanese language classes to sushi making to
so cool.
to kids art to
well, I was going to say, I think going on right now today was there. We won't be there, but for the smaller kids sector, they were making Japanese New Year cards today.
Yes.
I was like, oh, that's today. So, just neat stuff like that. I know you guys do like a kite festival. I don't remember if that's in January. That might be in January. But if you guys go on the website, they're like, you can click through and there's all kinds of classes, programs, events. You can sort it by family, by what. There's so much going on, and it's really cool. I was very surprised by that, by all the different kind of classes that you guys had.
Yeah. And our big festival coming up is Oshigatsu, which is Japanese New Year. That's the first Saturday or Sunday of the month of January. We've got Hatsume Festival, which we've had in the past. This year, I'm not sure we're going to do.
Okay.
That usually got us 8,000 to 10,000 people a day
my
through
goodness.
the doors. The problem is, with that many people, it takes a toll on the gardens.
I'm sure.
And it's hard to corral all of those people to stay on the paths and not mess up.
Don't trample all of the foliage. Yeah, like all that fun stuff that comes with crowds.
The rock gardens, they're raked to pristine condition. They get messed up, and sometimes it's difficult to see that happen to your baby.
I'm sure. It's like your house. People are just coming in, and you're like, smile through, gritted teeth. But
we have the Hatsume Festival. Then we have the Children's Day, where we have events for children, arts, crafts, dance, taiko drummers.
Yeah.
If you've ever experienced the taiko drummers,
No.
you know the movement of that.
I would love to see that.
The sound just reverberates through your body, and you can't help but be moved.
So cool.
Then we've got the Obon Festival in August, which is the lighting of the lanterns and communicating with your ancestors, their spirits.
So cool.
One time a year, you take a lantern. It's usually got a paper cover on it. You write a message to them. We float it on the lake with a lit candle in the middle.
Cool.
If you've ever experienced that, just a beautiful, beautiful view. The moonlight on the lake with the candles, with all of the people. It's just really a nice event.
That's pretty cool. Do you guys have volunteer opportunities too?
We do. We have a volunteer corps of about 300 people.
Okay.
They are the lifeblood of the museum. They range from helping to prepare exhibits to helping guide people on the property, to docents giving tours of the exhibit as well as the gardens. A lot of volunteer opportunities.
What's been your favorite exhibit that's come through so far in all of your years, your many years of involvement?
There's been so many, but the most moving probably was the Visas for Life.
Okay.
And that was one of the first ones we had. The Visas for Life was actually about a Japanese ambassador to Germany.
Okay.
That was helping to get Jewish people out of the state of Germany through Japan to other countries. So he was actually physically writing visas, unbeknownst to a lot of people, and helping save their lives.
Wow, that's pretty cool.
Through the Holocaust and everything else, he was able to manage to save thousands of people.
That's an amazing story. And so, again, why is it so important to keep this alive in South Florida? Just having that Japanese culture here, right, in South Florida. Why do you think that's so important?
Well, again, nobody knows that this was a Japanese colony.
Yeah.
Right? They see Yamato Road. They have no idea. At one time, the IBM Boca PC plant was on Yamato Road, and that's what it's really known for. And now it's the research and development area. There was a sister property in Japan that looks just like the Boca site.
Really?
So IBM had sites in both places.
Cool.
And so that's why it's important to understand our history.
Yeah, I think that's, and like I said, it's, everyone knows, I think they definitely know the name. Like Morikami is very well known in the area, but I don't think a lot of people understand like where it came from and why it's here. And
very true.
It's interesting.
And you say a lot of people understand that it's there, but they don't understand the history. And a lot of people have never visited.
I know this to be true also. Yeah.
Which is shocking. We've got neighborhood communities right next door, Addison Reserve, Long Lake Estates, Newport Bay. And you go to their homeowners meetings and they're like, we know it's there, but we've never been.
Right.
So.
And that's interesting. How do we change that?
I wish I had that answer.
I know. That's like, if anyone has any ideas, let Randal know. But yeah, no, it's interesting. I don't know if it's because there's just so much to do. Like there's just a lot going on in South Florida. Like, I don't know. It's like an interesting thing to me, but I love a good museum. So
Well, and people think of the museum as a museum, and they don't understand that the Japanese gardens are what they are, and they're actually an offshoot of the museum. They're actually a collection of gardens. They're not just a garden unto itself. We're not a botanical garden.
Right, which is important. I thank you for bringing that up, because I'm actually from the Chicago area, and we have a big botanical garden in northern Illinois, and it does have a huge Japanese garden section within it. And it's interesting to note, because somebody had asked me once, well, is Morikami, are there gardens, is it like a botanical garden? I'm like, no, it's not. It's very different. So, and what makes it a botanical garden?
Well, so typically in a botanical garden, you'll have signs naming the plants and the species and all. We have none of that.
Gotcha.
So when Hoichi Kuriso designed the gardens, he tried to use Japanese plants. And in South Florida, that just doesn't work, right? They won't grow whatever. And so he's used native South Florida plants and groomed them to look like Japanese plants.
That's really interesting.
So if you walk through the garden, you'll see how they're sculpted.
Okay.
A lot of the trees, they're being trained. They've got sticks and twigs and twine, all trying to direct them in a specific growing pattern.
That's cool.
One of the other things you'll see when you walk through the gardens, you'll feel is you being pulled into the gardens. And the way that he is designed and the garden curator continues to maintain the gardens is to prune them so that they're pulling, they're moving to one side.
Okay.
So they're pulling you into the gardens. The path along the gardens is about 1.1 miles. If you actually go the wrong way, you'll actually feel like it's uncomfortable.
That's so funny.
And it's all subliminal, but it's a strange feeling.
Designed that way, by design.
Is.
So is there anything that's changed in just, thinking about like a traditional garden in Japan versus, the Morikami gardens here? Has anything changed in the last 50 years? How they garden, and does that have to be brought over here?
No. So remember that we're a collection of gardens.
Okay.
So we've got 6 period gardens, and like I told you, we're working on a 7th.
Okay.
And they represent garden styles from a specific period.
Okay, gotcha.
So from the early rock garden, the Shinden garden, the late rock, the flat garden, the paradise, and the romantic garden, they all have different meanings and different purposes.
Okay.
Like in the romantic garden, there's many different levels in that garden, and you'll see the water movement is totally different, and it's supposed to symbolize a relationship.
Gotcha.
When a relationship starts, there's a lot of activity, and so that's where you see the falls, and then you get to a calm place where you've got a calm, and then you've got another rough patch, if you will.
That's so cool.
And then at the end, it just circles back around.
What's going to be the 7th garden? Can you divulge that?
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
It's on our master plan, the Amara Hashidate, which again is the Bridge to Heaven garden. And that's supposed to be right where our wisdom ring is now, in that area of the property. But not only do we have a garden on the master plan, we've got a ryokan, which is a Japanese inn.
Oh, so cool.
And that's supposed to be next on the agenda.
Okay.
We'll have an 80 to 100 key property. Where it will incorporate a wellness center, incorporate the gardens into that wellness center. That might have a small conference center, and that will augment. And one of the main catalysts for that is we have so many events at the museum, and when people come for a wedding or whatever, there's no place to stay close by.
Correct.
And so having a ryokan, a hotel on the property, will be a major draw for
That's really neat. How many people will be able to stay there?
80 rooms.
That's a
to
lot.
100 rooms. So
that's a lot.
And it won't be impending. It will be just 2-story type buildings.
Sure.
Keep within the architecture of the museum and the gardens and the flow and more nature. Gardens incorporated as well.
This just popped in my head, but have you ever had an actual chance yourself to go to Japan? Have you been there yourself?
I have not.
Oh my gosh, yeah. I was wondering. I'm like, I would love to go there one day. It's on my bucket list. I was just curious. I'm like, I don't know. That's pretty cool. All right, Randal. So tell me a little bit about Taste of Asia, because that's going to come up in the new year here very shortly.
So in the past, we've had a fundraising event by the Board of Trustees. It's typically been a gala type event where we are different than the other gala events in that ours has typically been outside.
Okay.
We have a tent that's put out. We have the lake behind us. We've had fireworks. We've had different art displays. We've had different types of activities. Anyway, this next year we've decided to back away from the typical gala event and do what we're calling a Taste of Asia.
Okay.
We'll have 10 different local restaurants that will have food stations, and it'll be a social fundraising event for a few hundred people.
Yeah, amazing. And so that's going to be February 17th, we said.
February 17th.
Okay,
correct.
That's great. And I like that you guys are trying something new. Something new, I mean.
Well, and so many times people are like, I've done a gala, I get dressed up, I feel fancy,
Correct.
It's fun, but it's time to change things up and look to see if we can't get other people involved outside of the traditional patrons that we have.
Amazing. I love that. So we're going to wrap up here, but if there's one takeaway that you really want people to know and understand about the Morikami Museum and Gardens, what is that?
That we're here and we want you to come visit us because you can definitely receive benefits by experiencing not just the culture, the art, the artifacts, but the gardens as well.
Amazing. Thank you so much for joining me here today. This is such an amazing property. And you guys, if you haven't been there, please just go there. Take a day and go there and spend some time. Check out the museum, walk the gardens. It's spectacular. And to Randall's point, you will feel like you are taken to a faraway place, which is, the whole point of the property. So thank you so much, Randall. And you can find more information on their website. We'll flash that up. Check out their website. You can go through and find some just awesome, incredible events, classes, workshops, in addition to just coming to the museum and visiting. So thank you for joining us here on 501c TV. Thank you to Kana House Studios, Wellington's first and only social media content creation studio. And we'll see you next time on 501c TV. Thank you.
Thank you.